Let me share something with you that will fundamentally transform how you think about reading and perhaps even how you think about time itself. The average person right now spends around 3 hours every single day watching Netflix. Let that sink in. That's enough time to read Tolstoy's epic War and Peace, not once, but 3 times every single month. And yet, what is the most common refrain we hear from others and tell ourselves? I just don't have time to read. This isn't a failing of discipline, it's a misunderstanding of how our own minds operate. Here's what makes this so fascinating. The secret to reading a book a week isn't about learning to speed read or magically finding more hours in your day. It's about understanding the invisible forces that shape your decisions and learning how to bend them to your will. Consider what happens when you decide you want to read more. You get a surge of motivation. You set ambitious goals, maybe even clearing your entire weekend schedule. You go out and buy a stack of promising books, picturing the wiser, more knowledgeable person you're about to become. But then, inevitably, reality hits. Life gets busy. A demanding project at work, family obligations, or just sheer exhaustion takes over. That initial burst of motivation fades, and the beautiful, promising books begin to gather dust on your nightstand, becoming silent monuments to good intentions. Now, watch this critical shift in thinking. Instead of trying to find more time or force more motivation, what if we made reading simply inevitable? Your environment is making decisions for you every single day, whether you are conscious of it or not. Think about your morning routine. You don't wake up and have a deep philosophical debate with yourself about whether or not to brush your teeth. You don't negotiate the pros and cons of taking a shower. These actions happen automatically on autopilot because you have built systems and an environment that make them the default. This is precisely where most reading advice fails and fails completely. It tells you to read faster, to force yourself to focus, to just push through the resistance with sheer willpower. But trying to solve a systems problem with more effort is like trying to fix a broken car engine by pressing harder on the gas pedal. It's not just ineffective, it's exhausting. Let me show you what actually works. It all starts with embracing 3 fundamental truths about reading. First, your reading habit is not a reflection of your motivation or your willpower. It is a direct reflection of your environment. Second, small, consistent, almost trivial actions will always, without fail, beat sporadic, heroic efforts. And third, the best reading system in the world is not the most complex or the most optimized. It is the one you will actually use. Over the course of this journey, we are going to build a reading system so natural, so effortless that not reading will begin to feel stranger than reading. But before we dive in, we must first dismantle the biggest myth about reading more. The idea that you need long, uninterrupted blocks of time. Remember this one. Simple truth. Books are built page by page, and reading habits are built moment by moment. Now, let me show you how to turn those fleeting moments into unstoppable momentum. Let me introduce you to what I call the 30-page solution. This simple idea is what transforms the seemingly impossible task of reading a book every week into an effortless, almost unconscious daily practice. Here's what makes this concept so fascinating. The average book is roughly 240 pages long. If you simply read 30 pages a day, you will naturally finish a book every 8 days, which puts you well on track for our goal. But the real power of this solution isn't in the simple arithmetic. It's in the profound psychology behind it. You see, when we set a goal to read an entire book, our mind immediately creates resistance. It's an enormous, undefined task, like trying to eat an entire wedding cake in a single sitting. The sheer scale of it is intimidating, but 30 pages? That's just a slice. It's manageable, it's digestible, and most importantly, it feels inevitable. Now, watch what happens when we apply this small, manageable slice to the fabric of real life. Most people can comfortably read 30 pages in about 45 minutes. But here's where it gets truly interesting. You do not need those 45 minutes all at once. In fact, it's better if you don't. Think about your day not as a solid block of time, but as a series of interconnected reading moments. Perhaps you read 10 pages while sipping your morning coffee, another 5 pages during your lunch break, right before you start eating, and then a final 15 pages in the evening as you wind down for bed. Suddenly, that 30-page goal isn't just achievable. It's almost automatic. It slots neatly into the existing pockets of your day, but there is something even more powerful at work here, happening just beneath the surface. Every single time you complete your 30 pages for the day, you are doing more than just reading. You are building proof. You are casting a vote for your new identity. Each completed day adds another layer of tangible evidence that you are, in fact, a consistent reader. This isn't about wishful thinking. It's about building a track record of success one day at a time. Now, let me show you how to make this system truly and completely inevitable. The key lies in something I call reading triggers. These are specific, pre-existing moments in your day that automatically cue you to pick up your book. Your morning coffee doesn't just wake you up. It becomes a signal to read. Your lunch break isn't just for eating. It becomes a natural pause. For a few pages, your evening routine now includes a natural, calming wind down with your book. We are no longer trying to find time to read. We are linking reading to the time we already have. Here's what most people miss entirely. The power of the 30-page solution isn't in the number itself. It could be 20 pages or 40 pages. The power is in the consistency. We are not trying to become faster readers. We are becoming inevitable readers. Remember this, success in reading isn't born from motivation or willpower. It is born from creating a system so natural, so deeply embedded in your daily life that reading becomes as automatic as checking your phone. Now, let me show you how to identify your own perfect reading triggers. Your environment is currently making thousands of decisions for you every single day, whether you realize it or not. And once you truly understand this, everything about reading more becomes remarkably simple. Consider what happens in a typical evening. You finish your day, you have dinner, and you finally sink into your favorite chair. Your hand, naturally, almost unconsciously, reaches for something. Is it reaching for a book, or is it reaching for your phone or the TV remote? This isn't a choice you're actively making in that moment. It's a decision your environment has already made for you, based on what is easiest and most obvious. Now, watch what happens when we apply this powerful understanding directly to our reading goals. Every single space in your life, from your bedroom to your kitchen, is either working for you or against you. Think of your environment as a subtle but persistent force like gravity. It is either pulling you toward reading or pulling you away from it. Let me show you how to create what I call reading gravity. The first principle is the 20-second rule. The idea is simple. Make reading 20 seconds easier to start than any competing activity. And make your biggest distractions 20 seconds harder to access. Here's how this works in practice. Tonight, place your current book on your nightstand, open to your bookmark with your reading glasses, if you need them, resting right on top. Now, the act of starting to read requires zero setup time. It's effortless. Meanwhile, take your phone, charger, and move it to another room, like the kitchen or the bathroom. By doing this, you've just created a small but significant amount of environmental friction that works in your favor. The path of least resistance now leads to your book, not your screen. The second principle is the visual invitation. Your brain is a prediction machine, constantly scanning your environment for cues about what to do next. When you walk into a room, certain objects seem to call out to you, suggesting an action. We're going to make books your primary environmental anchors. Create dedicated reading stations throughout your space. This could be a comfortable chair with perfect lighting and a small side table in your living room. It could be a peaceful corner in your kitchen for your morning reading. It could even be a simple book stand on your desk for a lunch break reading session. Each of these stations becomes a powerful visual trigger that silently communicates, this is a place for reading. But here's what transformed this from a helpful tip into a systematic approach. the third principle, which I call parallel processing. Place different types of books at different stations. Put your light, enjoyable fiction by your favorite armchair. Place your deep, challenging nonfiction at your desk. Keep a book of short stories or essays in the kitchen. Now, your environment isn't just supporting the act of reading. It's supporting the right kind of reading at the right time, depending on your mood and mental energy. Remember this fundamental truth: willpower doesn't create lasting habits, but environments do. You don't need more motivation to read. You need an environment that makes reading the path of least resistance. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to use these powerful environmental principles to transform what most people dismiss as dead time into golden reading opportunities. But first, take a moment right now to look around your current space. What subtle forces are shaping your habits? And more importantly, how can you begin to reshape them? Let's completely change the way you think about time forever. Most people operate under the belief that they need to find more time to read. But what if I told you that you are already surrounded by dozens of perfect reading moments every single day? You just haven't learned to recognize them yet. Let me show you how to perform what I call time alchemy, the art of transforming useless moments into valuable reading sessions. First, we need to identify what I call transition moments. These are the small, often overlooked gaps between your main activities, the 5 minutes you spend waiting for the coffee to brew, the 10 minutes in line at the grocery store, the 15 minutes you sit in your car after parking at work before you go inside. The key is to recognize that these moments are not interruptions in your day. They are the hidden framework that holds your day together. Now, watch how we transform these seemingly empty moments. Remember our environmental principles from the last chapter? We are going to create reading bridges across these transition moments. Each bridge will connect one part of your day to another, with reading as the natural, effortless path between them. For example, you place a book in your car. Now, the transition between your commute and your workday has a reading bridge. You put a book in your bag. Now, the transition of waiting for an appointment has a reading bridge. You're not just placing books randomly. You are strategically building bridges across the empty spaces of your day. But here's what makes this truly transformative. Once you start seeing these moments differently, something remarkable happens inside your mind. Waiting times are no longer frustrating. They become opportunities. Transitions are no longer wasted. They become invitations. Even being stuck in traffic becomes a gift when you have an audiobook ready to play. You are no longer desperately trying to find time to read. Instead, reading is finding you, appearing naturally and effortlessly throughout your day. This is the very heart of time alchemy. We are not creating new time out of thin air. We are transforming the time we already possess, turning lead into gold. And once you master this skill, reading a book a week isn't just possible. It becomes an inevitable side effect of how your day is structured. Remember this principle. Time isn't something you find. It's something you create. And in our next chapter, I'll show you how to multiply your reading effectiveness by applying a powerful parallel processing principle. But first, take a moment to notice the transition spaces in your own day, where your hidden reading bridges just waiting to be built. What I am about to share with you might seem counterintuitive at first. Most people, and indeed most reading advice, will tell you that you should only read one book at a time, from start to finish. But this common belief is actually holding you back from becoming a truly effective and prolific reader. Let me show you why. Think about how you watch television shows. It's highly likely that you follow several different series at once. You might have a complex drama for emotional depth, a lighthearted comedy for easy entertainment, and perhaps a documentary for learning. Your brain handles these multiple, distinct storylines and characters with absolute ease. Reading works in exactly the same way. Here's what makes this principle so powerful. Different types of books serve different mental and emotional states. Sometimes your mind craves deep, focused learning, and is ready to tackle a dense subject. At times, it needs lighter engagement, a captivating story to escape into. By having multiple books available and in progress, you are always ready to match your book to your current mental state. You never have to force yourself to read a difficult when you're tired, which is a recipe for failure. Instead, you can simply pick up the book that feels right for that moment. But the real magic happens in what I call cross-pollination. As you read across different genres and subjects, ideas from one book will begin to illuminate concepts in another. You'll start to see patterns emerge across seemingly unrelated fields. Your mind, by its very nature, will start to create connections that you might have otherwise missed if you were reading in a linear, isolated fashion. A principle from a business book might suddenly click when you read a biography about a historical figure. An insight from a psychology text might deepen your understanding of a character in a novel. Let me show you how to implement this effectively. Start with a simple system of 3 books. 1 book for growth. This is your challenging non-fiction book that pushes your boundaries. 1 book for knowledge. This could be a biography, history, or a practical skill book. And 1 book for pleasure. This is your fun, easy reading fiction or whatever you read purely for enjoyment. This isn't about trying to read them all simultaneously in one sitting. It's about having the right tool, the right book, available for your current mental state. Think of it like having a conversation with different friends. Each friend brings out a different aspect of your personality. Each one serves a different need in your life. Your personal reading ecosystem works in exactly the same way. When you remove the self-imposed pressure to finish 1 book before starting another, you paradoxically end up finishing more books because you are always reading the right book for your current state of mind, which makes the act of reading itself more enjoyable and sustainable. Remember this, your mind isn't a single-track railway. It's a vast interconnected network of paths. And in our next chapter, I'll show you how to use this network to not just read more, but to retain and connect everything you read. But first, think about your own life. Which books would you choose for each of your mental states? Growth, knowledge, and pleasure? Most people believe that focus is something you either have or you don't. It's seen as an innate trait, a personal virtue. But focus isn't a trait. It's a condition you create. And once you understand this, achieving a state of deep, immersive reading becomes remarkably simple. Consider what happens when you try to focus right now. Your attention is like a single spotlight in a room filled with shiny, distracting objects. Each notification on your phone, each open tab on your computer, each unfinished task nagging at the back of your mind is calling out for that spotlight. No wonder maintaining focus feels like such a constant, exhausting struggle. But here's how. To completely change your perspective, focus doesn't come from trying harder to concentrate. It comes from systematically removing the competition for your attention. Remember our reading stations we designed earlier? Now we are going to upgrade them and transform them into what I call attention sanctuaries. The first principle is called sensory simplification. Every single sensation your brain has to process. Sound from another room. A flicker of movement in your peripheral vision takes a small amount of energy away from the primary task of reading. Here's how we build a focus tunnel. Start with your visual environment. Position your reading light to create a natural spotlight effect directly on your book. The surrounding area should be slightly dimmer. You're not just lighting a book, you are creating a clear visual pathway for your attention, telling your brain exactly where to look. Next, we must address the architecture of your attention. Your phone is not just a device. It's an attention magnet with the addictive power of 1,000 televisions. So, we must create what I call device distance. The farther your phone is physically located from your reading station, the easier it becomes to resist its pull and stay focused. Putting it in another room is the gold standard. We are also going to use what I call focus anchors. These are small rituals or objects That signal to your brain that it's time for deep focus. This could be a specific reading posture that you only adopt when you're in your attention sanctuary. It could be a particular type of tea that you brew with its aroma becoming associated with reading time. It could even be a special, beautiful bookmark that marks not just your page, but your transition into a state of deep reading mode. Now, watch how this combines powerfully with our concept of time alchemy. Those transition moments we identified earlier, the 2 or 3 minutes before you start reading, are not dead time. They are your runway for launching into deep focus. Use that time to prepare your space, brew your tea, and silence your distractions. The depth of your focus isn't determined in the moment you start reading. It is determined by how you have intentionally designed your environment minutes, hours, and even days before. You are not building focus through sheer force of will. You are removing everything that disrupts it. Remember this, focus isn't something you do. It's something you allow to happen by creating the right conditions. And in our next chapter, I'll show you how to use this powerful focus system to not just read, but to retain everything you read. But first, look at your primary reading environment. What is currently competing for your attention? And how can you begin to create your own focus tunnel? Most people believe that memory works like a camera, capturing perfect, high-fidelity snapshots of information that we can recall later. But your mind actually works much more like an artist, interpreting new information and creating rich, meaningful connections between ideas. And once you understand this fundamental difference, retention becomes a natural, almost effortless process rather than a forced one. Think about a great conversation you had with a close friend last week. You probably remember the key points, the feelings, and the main takeaways with surprising clarity. You weren't taking notes or actively trying to memorize what they were saying. You remember because you were fully present and actively engaged in the dialogue. Reading can and should work in exactly the same way. Here's what makes this principle so powerful. When you create an active dialogue with the books you're reading, your mind naturally builds the connections and patterns that form the bedrock of long-term memory. Let me show you how to transform passive reading into a state of active learning. Remember our focus tunnels from the previous chapter? Now, we are going to add engagement layers to that experience. The first layer is called mental noting. It's incredibly simple. As you read, simply notice when something surprises you, confuses you, or connects to something you already know. And that's it. Just a brief mental flag. Watch how this works in practice. When you encounter an interesting idea or surprising fact, pause for just a moment, maybe only 5 seconds. Let your mind naturally connect it to your own experiences, to another book you've read, or to a problem you're currently facing. You are not trying to memorize the information. You're trying to create meaning from it. The second layer is conversational reading. As you read, imagine you are having a direct conversation with the author. When they make a point, ask yourself questions. Do I agree with this? Why or why not? What examples from my own life either support or challenge this idea? This internal dialogue turns you from a passive recipient of information into an active participant in a discussion. And here's how to make this even more impactful. We're going to use what I call connection points. Every time you finish a reading session, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, take just 30 seconds to connect what you've just read, something you already know. You are consciously building bridges between new information and your existing knowledge base. This is where our multiple book strategy becomes even more effective. When you are reading several books concurrently, your mind naturally begins to see patterns and make connections across different subjects. These spontaneous connections become your strongest and most durable retention tools. Retention isn't about forcing information into your memory banks. It's about creating an environment and a process where forgetting becomes difficult, because everything you read is woven into the fabric of what you already know. Your mind is not a bucket to be filled with information. It is a network that grows stronger and more intricate with each new connection. And in our next chapter, I'll show you how to use these powerful connections to transform knowledge into real-world results. But first, think about the last thing you read. What does it remind you of and why? We are now going to transform reading from a passive intellectual activity into a powerful engine for real-world change. Most people treat books as sources of entertainment or as a way to collect information. But what if every single book you read could create tangible, measurable changes in your work, your relationships, and your life? Think about the last time you learned something that immediately and permanently changed your behavior. It probably wasn't from passively consuming a piece of information. It was likely from experiencing a direct, undeniable connection between that knowledge and a real-world result. We are going to systematically create that same powerful connection with everything you read, instead of waiting until you finish a book to think about how you might implement its ideas. You are going to create action bridges as you read. Each reading session, no matter how short, becomes a catalyst for immediate small-scale change. Remember our engagement layers from the previous chapter. Now we are adding implementation triggers. Every time you encounter a useful, interesting, or actionable idea in your reading, you will ask yourself one simple question. What is the smallest possible step I could take to test this concept right now or today? Watch how this completely transforms your reading experience. When you read about a new productivity technique, you don't just highlight it. You immediately identify one small task you could apply it to later that day. When you discover a communication strategy in a book, you think of one specific conversation you have coming up where you could try to use it. You are no longer just collecting ideas. You are creating immediate, real-world evidence that these ideas work. Here's where our multiple book strategy comes in handy again. Each book you are reading becomes a different testing ground for new ideas. Your business book might suggest a new framework for making decisions. Your psychology book helps you understand the cognitive biases that might affect that decision. Your biography shows you how someone else successfully used a similar framework in a high-stakes situation. You are not just learning from multiple sources. You are implementing and integrating ideas from multiple angles, creating a much richer understanding. We are going to create what I call evidence loops. Every time you implement a small action from your reading, take just 30 seconds to know. The result? What happened? Was it effective? What did you learn? You are building a personal, customized database of what works for you. This creates a fascinating and powerful cycle. The more you implement, the more evidence you collect. The more evidence you collect, the more confidence you build in the process. The more confidence you build, the more likely you are to implement new ideas in the future. Reading becomes a self-reinforcing engine of personal and professional growth. Remember this critical distinction. Knowledge without action isn't really knowledge. It's just information waiting to be forgotten. And in our next chapter, I'll show you how to track and measure these changes to create truly unstoppable momentum. But first, look at the book you are currently reading. What is one small action you could take in the next hour to test an idea you've encountered? Most people, when they track their reading, focus on counting the number of books or pages they've read. But true progress isn't about quantity. It's about the expanding ripples of change that reading creates in your life. Think about how you naturally track the things that truly matter to you. You don't need a complicated system to remember if you enjoyed a delicious meal or if a conversation with a loved one, well, your mind naturally tracks experiences that create value. We are going to work with this natural tendency, not against it, instead of tracking reading as an isolated activity. We are going to create what I call progress constellations. Each book you read becomes the center of a network of visible, tangible changes. Remember our implementation engine from the previous chapter? Now, we are adding impact mapping. Every time you implement an idea from a book, you create a visible marker of change. These markers become the breadcrumbs that trace the path of your progress. What does this mean in practice? When you test a new concept from your reading, take just 30 seconds to capture 3 things. What you tried, what happened as a result, and what you learned from the experience. You can do this in a simple notebook or a digital document. You're not just tracking actions. You're creating a visual map of your personal growth, where you're going to use what I call progress loops. Each successful implementation, and even the unsuccessful ones, will naturally lead to deeper questions. These questions, in turn, will guide your next reading choices, creating a purposeful and directed learning journey. This is where our multiple book strategy reveals yet another layer of its power. The impact from each book starts connecting with the others. A productivity technique you learned combines with a psychological insight you gained. A leadership principle from one book illuminates a historical pattern you read about in another. You are not just tracking separate, isolated pieces of progress. You are watching a complex, beautiful web of understanding grow before your eyes. Here's what most people miss entirely about progress. It isn't linear. It's much more like a garden than a ladder. Some seeds you plant will sprout quickly, while others will take time to germinate. But everything you plant, every idea you engage with, contributes to the overall health and richness of the ecosystem. You don't need to measure every single leaf to see that your garden is growing. You just need to notice the changing landscape of your life. And in our final chapter, I'll show you how to take all this progress and turn it into unstoppable, self-sustaining momentum. But first, look back at your recent reading. What small ripples of change can you already see spreading through your life? We have now built, piece by piece, an extraordinary system for reading and learning. Now it is time to step back and watch how these individual components work together to create something far greater than the sum of their parts. This is how real, lasting momentum is built. Think about pushing a stalled car. The hardest part isn't keeping it moving. It's that initial immense effort to get it to move in the first place. Reading works in exactly the same way, and every system we have put in place has been designed to overcome that initial inertia and build forward motion. Look at how each piece we've assembled creates that forward motion. Our 30-page solution broke down the intimidating goal into a manageable daily action. Our reading stations removed the physical friction of getting started. Our time alchemy found the hidden pockets of time where reading could naturally fit. Our focus tunnels made deep engagement not just possible, but inevitable. Each element systematically reduces resistance while simultaneously increasing the forward push. But here's where it becomes truly powerful. Watch how these elements combine to create momentum loops. When you read in your designated morning station, you are not just reading for that day. You are strengthening the neural pathways that make tomorrow's reading session even easier and more automatic. Each action reinforces every other action in the system. Your intentional environmental design makes focus feel natural. That enhanced focus makes implementing ideas easier. Successful implementation creates visible progress, and that visible progress provides the motivation and curiosity to read even more. You are not just building a series of disconnected habits. You are creating a self-sustaining, self-improving system. Here's what transforms this from a powerful system into an unstoppable force. We're going to use what I call momentum stacking. Each book you read doesn't just add to your store of knowledge. It creates new connections that make the next book you read exponentially more valuable. Think about how this works in practice. A psychology book helps you understand how habits form, which in turn helps you implement the ideas from your productivity reading more effectively. This gives you more time and mental clarity, which provides you with new insights that make your leadership reading more practical and applicable. Each book becomes a new lens that makes all your other books, past and future, more powerful. This is the ultimate reason why our multiple book strategy is so crucial. You are not just reading several books at once. You are creating a network of understanding that grows exponentially, not linearly. Each new connection multiplies the value of everything you have already read. Momentum isn't about speed. It's about the compounding effect of small, consistent, aligned actions. Every page you read, every idea you implement, every connection you make, they all work together, pushing in the same direction to create unstoppable forward motion. You now have everything you need. You have the systems, the strategies, and the deep understanding of how to make reading an effortless and integral part of your life. But remember this above all else. The journey of reading isn't about reaching a destination or hitting a certain number of books. It's about becoming someone who grows a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser every single day. Now, go build your momentum dot. And hey, if you found value in this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. More importantly, let me know your thoughts in the comments on what I just shared.